Marshall Peak. Chapter 42:13. I won't disappoint you. Yang Kai ignored the looks and comments of the outsiders and entered the Azura arena. He was immediately greeted by the sight of the heaven, earth, and mortal rankings, each of which contained 100 names. He casually swept a glance over the rankings and sure enough, he saw Yu Luosha's name right at the top of the earth rankings. It was shining golden and looked very dazzling. The list was constantly changing. From time to time, one of the names would slide down the rankings while others would vanish altogether. Those names that slid down the rankings belonged to the people who were defeated in the Azura arena, while those names that vanished from the rankings belonged to the people who died in battle. Yang Kai suddenly glanced towards the bottom of the mortal rankings and smiled. That brat Qing Shan is doing pretty well. In the 95th position of the mortal rankings was Lang Qing Shan's name. 3 days ago, Yang Kai asked Lang Qing Shan and the others to enter the Azura arena for training. They immediately rolled up their sleeves and came over the very next day. Over the past few days, they didn't even return to first in. They were practically regarding the Azura arena as their home. In just 3 days, Lang Qing Shan had made his way into the 95th position of the mortal rankings. It went to show just how diligently he had been fighting. During their conversation, Lang Qing Shan's name suddenly jumped up the rankings and abruptly landed on the 89th spot. The name of the person who used to rank 89th slid down and stopped just below his name. At the same time, Yang Kai faintly heard an earth-shaking roar of cheers coming from a corner of the Azura arena. "Are you Yang Kai?" A person's voice sounded from the side. Yang Kai looked up and saw a few young men dressed as young lords walking over from not far away. They were followed by several low-rank Open Heaven Realm masters. It would seem that they came from a rather extraordinary background. There were 3 people in total, and they were all dressed differently. One was dressed in black, one was dressed in white, and the other was dressed in green. The person who spoke just now was the young lord in green. He was holding a folding fan in his hand and pretending to be suave. While he was speaking, he couldn't help stealing a few glances at Yuhi with gleaming eyes. On the other hand, Yuhi's gaze was as sharp as knives. She gave him a vicious look, causing him to smile in embarrassment and reluctantly withdraw his gaze. "That's right, and you are?" Yang Kai politely cupped his fist. The young lord dressed in white announced, "You don't need to know who we are. All you need to know is that our interests are closely related to your victory or loss today." Yang Kai suddenly understood the situation. These people must have placed bets. A betting pool would be open for every battle in the Azura arena, and these wagers would have different odds to attract the cultivators watching to gamble. It stood to reason that he knew about this. After all, this was the reason why Pei Buwan suddenly earned such a large sum of money last time. His battle with Yu Luosha today would surely have a similar aspect. But why did these people come to find me? Yang Kai had a sudden thought and looked at them in astonishment. Could it be that the 3 of you placed a bet on my victory? The young lord in white responded without a trace of politeness. "In your dreams. We might come from wealthy families and spend money like water, but we are not stupid enough to just throw money away. Why would we bet on your victory?" Yang Kai became annoyed. "If you favor Yu Luosha, then why did you come to me? Are these 3 people sick in the head?" The young lord in black raised a hand to pat Yang Kai on the shoulder and gave a sigh. "Junior brother Yang, the 3 of us actually quite admire your courage. We can't believe you have the guts to accept Yu Luosha's challenge. It's rare to see a young man as bold as you nowadays. I heard you defeated Yu Luosha more than 10 years ago. Is that true?" Yang Kai nodded in response. The young lord in black heaved another heavy sigh. "It is said that one can make great progress in 3 days, much less after more than 10 years. It is best not to think of her in the same way. You might have won against Yu Luosha in the past, but now..." He gazed at Yang Kai with a pitying look and patted Yang Kai on the shoulder. "Work hard to survive. You will only have hope for the future if you survive." Yang Kai chuckled and did not know how to respond. The young lord in green closed his folding fan. "That's not the main point. The main point is that you must survive for some time against Yu Luosha. The 3 of us are betting that you can hold out against that crazy woman for an incense stick at least." The young lord in white said, "Since you have the guts to accept Yu Luo Sha, I'm sure you have some confidence in your abilities. An incense stick should be fine, right?" Yang Kai was curious. "You can even make a bet like that?" The young lord in black replied, "Why not?" The Azura Arena opened an extensive betting pool. And although the odds are lower, we can still earn a lot if we bet a lot. Yang Kai looked at the three of them and exclaimed in surprise, "Did all of you bet that I could hold out for an incense stick?" The young lord in black looked apologetic. "Not all of us. I bet that you won't last for more than half an incense." Seeing Yang Kai glaring at him resentfully, he continued, "There are even worse out there. Su Tang Tang bet 3 million open heaven pills that you will be defeated in 10 moves. That guy is nuts. So junior brother Yang, you have to do your best. You must hold out for more than 10 moves," he added in a low voice, "and lose to Yu Luo Sha within half an incense. I will treat you to a meal later." Yang Kai was so furious that steam came out of his nostrils. "Did Yu Luo Sha send the three of you here to humiliate me?" The three young lords smiled in embarrassment and quickly replied, "Of course not." Yang Kai snapped, "Didn't anybody bet that I would win?" The three young lords exchanged glances with each other before shaking their heads in unison. They looked at Yang Kai like he was a lunatic. Yang Kai smiled and nodded, but his smile did not reach his eyes. Good. I will do my best not to disappoint the three of you then." The young lord in black brightened at those words and cupped his fists. "Many thanks, junior brother Yang. If you survive the battle today, the three of us will definitely become your friends." Sure. Yang Kai smiled and nodded. Afterward, he parted ways with these three. Under the guidance of one of the people from the Azura Arena, he walked into a room to wait for the Azura Arena to prepare the battlefield. Then he abruptly turned towards Pei Buwan. "How much did you bet, shopkeeper Pei?" Pei Buwan made an incoherent noise as his gaze wandered nervously for a bit before he raised a finger. Yang Kai smiled brightly. "How long did you bet that I would last?" Pei Buwan looked guilty. He hesitated for a long while, then he gave a flattering smile. "An hour." "Wow. Shopkeeper Pei, you sure think quite highly of me. Should I thank you?" Pei Buwan immediately said, "Little brother Yang, it's not that this big brother is favoring an outsider over you. It's just that Yu Luo Sha's growth over the past 10 years is extremely terrifying. She is much stronger today than she was back then. But I know that you are no ordinary guy either, little brother Yang. I'm sure you grew tremendously over the past 10 years, so you can definitely hold out for an hour." 3-1. He considered for a moment. "Little brother Yang, do you want to bet a little? There is still time. It's no big deal even if you lose a battle. It's more important to earn some open heaven pills. Besides, now is the time when you need lots of cultivation resources for your cultivation. You won't get another chance like this if you let this chance slip by." 3-1. Those are some really stacked odds. Yang Kai secretly gritted his teeth. The Azura Arena was obviously looking down on him by offering such odds. It could even be said that nobody who knew about this battle was optimistic about his chances at all. If the odds are so high just for me to hold out for an hour, then the odds of my victory against Yu Luo Sha should be even higher, right? 10-1. Pei Buwan answered solemnly. "These are the highest odds that the Azura Arena has ever offered in its history. There has not been any precedent of a higher offer." Yang Kai turned to look at Yu He. "How many open heaven pills do we have left?" Yu He immediately replied, "We still have more than 360 million. Young master, are we going to place a bet?" "Bet everything." He waved his hand grandly. "I'm going to force Azura Arena to compensate me with the clothes on their back, down to their underpants." Yu He accepted the order and took her leave. Pei Buwan's mouth gaped open in shock. At first, he was shocked that a trivial Emperor Realm cultivator like Yang Kai had several hundreds of millions of open heaven pills in hand. It had to be said that even as the shopkeeper of the 100 refinings hall, the funds that passed through his hands were no more than tens of millions at most. Did he rob a cave heaven or a paradise over the past few years? How did he accumulate so many open heaven pills? A moment later, He was shocked at how decisively Yang Kai decided to bet all those open heaven pills in one go. It wasn't until Yuhi departed that he finally came back to his senses and hurriedly said, "Little brother Yang, what are you betting on? You can't just randomly make such a bet. That's several hundreds of millions of open heaven pills. What if he loses?" Just thinking about the possibility distressed Pei Buwan. "None of your damn business." Yang Kai snapped angrily. Pei Buwan was in the wrong here, so he did not dare to say another word. A short while later, Yuhi returned and reported with some dissatisfaction. "Young master, the Azura Arena only accepts a maximum bet of 100 million. I can't bet any more than that. I have asked Guo Ziyan and the others to rush over immediately." Yang Kai nodded gently. While they were conversing with each other, the door opened, and an elderly man walked into the room. He swept a glance across the room and asked, "Which one of you is Yang Kai?" Yang Kai stood up. "Me." Before anybody could figure out the answer, the sea of blood in the Azura Arena began squirming madly, as though struck by a powerful impact. The sea of blood shattered, and the figures of two people swiftly fell out of the sky. Under everybody's gaze, those figures suddenly vanished. Even though it had only been for a moment, almost everybody saw Yang Kai grabbing Yu Luo Sha by the face with a large hand and viciously smashing her towards the ground. Yu Luo Sha was not willing to just give up and admit defeat. Both her slender jade hands and long legs, every part of her body had been transformed into a weapon that bombarded Yang Kai indiscriminately. On the other hand, Yang Kai remained as stubborn and unchanging as a mountain. Motionless, he ignored whatever attacks she unleashed against him. Hong! The entire Azura Arena shuddered, and countless cultivators in the audience also felt the ground shaking beneath them. A cloud of dust rose up at the spot where the two fighters landed. Numerous ancient towering trees crashed to the ground, forming a straight line that stretched out for several hundreds of meters. The scene was chaotic, and the figures of both Yang Kai and Yu Luo Sha could no longer be seen amidst the dust. Everybody hurriedly lifted their heads and looked up at the sky, where a huge projected image of the battle between those two under the effects of the spirit arrays in the Azura Arena stood. What entered their eyes made them draw a deep breath of cold air in surprise. Inside that enormous light barrier, Yang Kai was kneeling with one knee on the ground. He had one large hand pressing against the ground, his black hair and clothes flapping from the impact. As for Yu Luo Sha, she was smashed into the ground with her face still in the grip of his hand. The long stretch of empty space behind them resembled a large mouth, mocking soundlessly. That shout was particularly jarring in the silent arena. In the next moment, the others joined in. Countless people accused Yang Kai of being shameless and despicable. They claimed that he must have maliciously launched a sneak attack. Otherwise, Yu Luo Sha would not have been defeated in one blow. Yang Kai swept a cold gaze over the audience and scolded, "You bunch of trash! If you're willing to gamble, you must be willing to lose. You're all just bitter because you lost everything down to your underwear, right? Ha 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 ha." He burst into maniacal laughter, inciting the anger of all the people in the arena, tempting them to rip his corpse into 10,000 pieces. Nevertheless, his words were the truth. Countless people went bankrupt because of this battle. After all, everybody had looked down on Yang Kai before the battle began, and almost everybody placed a bet on Yu Luo Sha as a result. The odds might be lower, but it was just as the young lord mentioned before. If they bet more, then they would win more. Unfortunately, Yang Kai smashed their beautiful dreams to pieces with brute force in less than 10 breaths. It was no wonder that they were accusing him of being despicable and launching a sneak attack. Strictly speaking, Yang Kai had not launched a sneak attack. He only made his move after hearing the voice saying, "Let the battle begin." There were no doubts regarding whether or not he had launched a sneak attack. It was just that some of those people were not happy about losing. That was why they threw those accusations at him. It wasn't until this moment that the voice explaining all the rules earlier rang out again. This time, it sounded extremely dry. "Winner Yang Kai." In the next moment, a man slipped into the arena and stopped in front of Yu Luo Sha. He reached out 3 fingers to check whether she was still breathing. When he confirmed that she had just passed out and was in no danger, he seemed slightly relieved. He then bent down and picked her up. Then, he raised his head and glared at Yang Kai furiously before leaving in a hurry. Yang Kai scratched his nose, knowing that he made himself stand out too much. The person who carried Yu Luosha away was most likely one of Azura Heaven's disciples. Yu Luosha could be considered one of the Azura Arena's golden signboards. So now that he smashed that signboard to pieces, it would be strange if he did not attract some grudges. Yang Kai had not wanted to stand out. It was just that Yu Luosha was just too bullheaded. She would not have given up and would simply continue to pester him in the future, unless he gave her a taste of despair. Fortunately, Azura Heaven was one of the 36 cave heaven, and the Azura Arena was its primary business. Even if Azura Heaven was upset with him, it would not stoop so low as to secretly get rid of him. Besides, it was not that there was no precedent of Azura Heaven disciples dying in the Azura Arena. Under Yang Kai's perception, he found that many barriers had been placed inside the room to prevent outsiders from spying into it. The private room faced one side of the auction hall, with a transparent crystal partition to block out prying eyes and noise from the outside. Everything in the hall could be seen through the transparent crystal partition. However, nothing inside the room could be seen if a person were to glance at the room from inside the hall. The proprietress was the shopkeeper of First Inn. Moreover, her cultivation was in the 6th order open heaven realm. It was only natural that she was qualified to enter a room like this. Yang Kai glanced around his surroundings and discovered that there were dozens of similar rooms. In other words, at least several dozen mid-rank open heaven realm masters were participating in this auction. Such a large-scale auction could only be described as a grand occasion. It was much grander than the auction he participated in back at Wind and Cloud Auction House. After the 4 of them took their seats, the maidservant immediately served several platters of fruit. The spirit fruits on the platters were crystal clear and very fragrant. Yang Kai randomly grabbed one and tasted it, only to have his mouth filled with sweetness in an instant. Thus, he quickly grabbed another and tossed it to Yuhi. Yuhi caught the fruit with a small smile and began to eat in dainty bites. Yang Kai had only eaten 2 when he saw Bai Qi storing these spirit fruits into his space ring. His actions made the maidservant in the room snicker softly, while the proprietress glared at him fiercely. However, Bai Qi was very thick-skinned and did not seem to care. He even winked conspiratorially at Yang Kai. The hall was soon bursting at the seams with people, and a short while later, the sound of gongs and instruments played. The lights in the auction hall dimmed, leaving only a single beam of light that shone in the center of the stage. The light was emitted from a strange stone on the roof. At that moment, be it in the hall or the various private rooms, everybody's eyes were drawn to the stage. At some point, a thin and stiff-faced old man had appeared in the middle of that beam of light. He bowed in a circle and said, "Many thanks to all our honored guests for taking the time out of their busy schedules to participate in the auction held by Red Cloud's auction house. Many of you have worked tirelessly to travel here from great distances. If nothing else, this old master guarantees that this auction will not disappoint you. Without further ado, let the auction officially begin." The old man was probably from Red Cloud's auction house, and was in the 4th order open heaven realm at least. When he finished speaking, the light in the hall brightened considerably. A tall maidservant walked out from backstage, carrying a tray with a sweet smile on her face. The maidservant walked over to the old man's side where he raised his hand and removed the red cloth covering the tray. The first item on auction is a 6th order scarlet een sand. There are a total of 999 grains of sand. If those beneath the open heaven realm were to refine and absorb them, they would have a chance to obtain the Scarlet een Sandstorm divine ability. The effects of this divine ability are extremely powerful and cover an extensive area. It is capable of taking a person's life without any trace. The reserve price for this item is 10 million open heaven pills, and each subsequent bid cannot be less than 500,000. Those who are interested may place their bids now. The hall flew into an uproar while the sound of many people inhaling sharply came from the various private rooms. A cultivator required 7 elements to advance into the open heaven realm. They were yin yang metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Among these 7, the yin and yang elements were much rarer. Marshall Pete, Chapter 42:20. Friend, you're being excessive. It was a pity that all the mid-rank open heaven realm masters were all intelligent people. How could they change their minds just because of somebody's casual remarks? Many of the cultivators in the hall secretly felt helpless. They originally thought that since the starting price for the spirit pill was only 2 million open heaven pills, the final price would not be too high. Who could have thought that so many of the mid-rank open heaven realm masters would be so determined to bid for this item from the very beginning? Therefore, many of the cultivators in the hall immediately gave up hope. This item was not something weaker cultivators like them could even dream about having. Only those backed by a powerful great force had the qualifications to participate in the competition. After 30 breaths, the price had risen to a whopping 15 million open heaven pills. In another 10 breaths, the price became 19 million open heaven pills. The entire hall was in an uproar. Up until now, the scarlet yin sand that Yang Kai acquired at a price of 26 million was the highest priced item sold at the auction. Since then, no other auction item has sold for more than 5 million. And now, the price of the Heavenly Yuan Seal stabilizing pill in addition to its recipe had quickly broken through 20 million and might even surpass the price of the scarlet yin sand. It was just that a price like this had more or less reached the upper limits of the price range. There was only one Heavenly Yuan Seal stabilizing pill after all. The pill recipe might be valuable, but it was not guaranteed that one could obtain any results from researching it even after purchasing the item. If one could not figure out a replacement for the main ingredient, which was the famed world source liquid, then all the previous efforts would be in vain. The open heaven realm masters present were not fools. Even with the backing of their respective great forces, 20 million was not a small sum. It was not an amount that could be waved around casually. Hence, only 3 private rooms continued to bid for the auction item after the price exceeded 20 million. A short while later, another party bowed out of the bidding. Only room A5 and room B2 continued to compete against each other fiercely. The moment one party made an offer, the other party would immediately follow suit. It would seem that they were extremely interested in the Heavenly Yuan Seal stabilizing pill and its pill recipe. When the price exceeded 25 million, the open heaven realm master in room B2 suddenly let out a gloomy sigh and spoke up loudly. Brother Ting Wang, this auction item is very useful for this ye. Can you concede to me this once? This ye will be very grateful, and will owe you a favor, which will surely be repaid in the future. The moment this person's voice rang out, the proprietress looked pensive and soon muttered, "It's those two." Yang Kai became curious. "Proprietress, do you know those two?" She replied, "If I'm not wrong, then the person in room B2 is Yi Jian of Thunderclap Hall, while the other person Tung Wang of Clear Heart Palace. No wonder they are willing to go to such lengths to bid for this item." Sure enough, the person in room A5 responded, "Brother Yi Jian, are you saying that this item is useless to me just because it is very useful for you? I am going to win this auction." Yi Jian sighed. "Why do you have to do this? Competing between ourselves will only benefit others. Why don't we do it this way instead, Brother Ting Wang? This ye only wants the Heavenly Yuan Seal stabilizing pill. If you are willing to back down, this ye will share the pill recipe with you. What do you think?" Tung Wang laughed. "What a coincidence. I was just about to suggest the same thing. Brother Yi Jian, if you are willing to back down, then I can also share the pill recipe with you." 45 million. Yi Jian followed up without hesitation. Yang Kai was stunned. The proprietress commented, "There is a difference between a disciple and a son after all. It looks like Yi Jian is determined to compete with you." Tung Wang's disciple required the Heavenly Yuan Seal stabilizing pill, as did Yi Jian's son. It was just that Tung Wang pulled out of the competition when the price reached 35 million. On the other hand, Yi Jian was still stubbornly trying to win. It was obvious that he loved and cherished his son deeply. Also, he believed that his son would definitely advance into the Sixth Order Open Heaven realm, as long as he had the Heavenly Yuan Seal stabilizing pill. Why else would he be so fixated upon this item, even if they were father and son? Why don't you discuss with him to each pay half? You take the pill recipe, while he takes the spirit pill. I'm sure he won't reject your offer. The proprietress suggested. Yang Kai considered for a moment before shaking his head. The Heavenly Yuan Seal stabilizing pill has never appeared before. In order to refine this spirit pill, the results will be different if I can study a finished product first. Once the spirit pill falls into his hands, it will be difficult for me to research the spirit pill again. There is no other way then. With the spirit pill in hand, the hopes of refining a Heavenly Yuan Seal stabilizing pill would increase significantly. Although it would cost him a lot of open heaven pills, this investment was undoubtedly worth the money. 46 million. Yang Kai raised the bid once more. 50 million. Yi Jian's voice trembled slightly. Even if he could afford to pay this amount, the terrifyingly high price was still heartbreaking. After placing his bid, he added, Madame Lan, my son is young and foolish. He made a huge mistake, and desperately needs this Heavenly Yuan Seal stabilizing pill. Only then will he have the hope of progressing forward. Madame Lan, please listen to my request. The proprietress pretended not to hear and said nothing in response. After all, she was not the one who was participating in the auction, it was Yang Kai. Although she used her identity to scold Teng Wang earlier, it was only her way of helping Yang Kai. How could she say anything under these circumstances? Seeing that there was no response from room A3, Yi Jian felt his heart sinking to the bottom of the abyss. Sure enough, a voice soon came from that direction to place a higher bid. The price was increased by just 500,000. Inside room B2, Yi Jian's expression crumbled, looking like he had aged several dozen years. Beside him, a young man with large eyes and thick brows smiled bitterly. Father, let's forget it. This price is far too high. Yi Jian clenched his fists tightly. No, I have not lost. I can still continue. The young man said, It's enough, father. Even if the item we pledge far exceeds 50 million in value, that is a treasure that belongs to the sect. If the losses we suffer are too high, it will be difficult for us to provide a sufficient explanation when we return. Father, let's stop here. Yi Jian muttered painfully, I am aware of that. How can I not be? But you. The young man smiled bitterly. Don't worry, father. In the worst case, I will simply never advance into the open heaven realm. Who knows? Things might change in the future. There is no need to waste so much money at this juncture, especially since everyone else in the sect also requires a lot of resources for cultivation. You don't need to worry too much about me. Yi Jian opened his mouth to speak, but finally let out a heavy sigh. The old man on the stage called out the countdown. Finally, the bidding for the Heavenly Yuan Seal stabilizing pill and its pill recipe came to an end. The auction item was sold at a terrifyingly high price of 55 million open heaven pills.